the fastest way to expand your memory is by integrating your shadows into your identity. So if somebody calls me good for nothing, I'm going to stab them, right? So that has to be changed into an identity. So your identity is nothing but a memory. So we have a brain, okay, that looks somewhat like this, like obviously I'm a great artist. Here, the back, imagine this is your eye, right? And this here, your nose is here and things like that, right? Your face is going here. Okay. So this is your hairline. Think about this is like your hairline. This part of your brain was somehow called neocortex. Neocortex. So this part of your brain is called neocortex. So if this is a hand model of your brain, imagine this is your head, your brain. So this part goes down here, this goes here, this goes here. This part of your brain, this part is called neocortex. It's called a new cortex. Neocortex is new cortex. So it was new one time, right? So when we were mammals, like long time ago, when humans were not like quite evolved yet, so we developed this thing called neocortex, a new cortex, new type of brain cells that can store a large amount of memory. Okay. So if you go to a snake or if you go to a chicken, the amount of memory, amount of autobiographical memory is very little. They might have memory. If somebody is attacking, we should run away, right? If like something is coming fast at you, you have to run away from it. I'm actually running away from you. Yeah. So that memory is there for every animal. But human animal has significantly more memory about who we are. It can be called autobiographical memory. It's a memory about ourselves. If you are going to write an autobiography, you'll use that to write it, right? So autobiographical type memory. And that memory about who you are is your identity. So your identity is nothing but a memory primarily in your neocortex. So like memory is not just stored in neocortex, but neocortex is a primary place you will store memory. And those memories are converted into long-term memories into the cortex, into somewhere else nearby. Okay, but we are not going into that now. So if I were to erase your memory today, and then you start over today, and as a new human, who are you? You don't know, right? You don't know who you are anymore. Because who you are and your memory about who you are is simply defined by your memory of who you are. Does that make sense now? So what if we could change that memory of who you are, right? And for that, there are ways to change the memory of who you are. For that, we are bringing the idea of shadows. So the fastest way to expand your memory is by integrating your shadows into your identity. So in other words, in that 7 layers, you might have seen that the first layer is identity and its counterpart, shadow. So what is a shadow? And again, you might be like, oh, I have studied shadow work for quite a long time. I have a PhD in shadow work, right? Just listen to this. Just pay attention to this. This is a damn unique way of looking at the world. If you don't want. So integrating your shadows into your identity. So imagine that as a kid. This is a kid. And you have 2 hair like me. And as a kid, your parents told you are lazy. You're lazy, useless, good for nothing, something like that. It's possible, Western, Eastern world. And then culturally, we are becoming more nuclear families, which means parents have too much stress. So they just want to wend off and they're like, you stupid lazy bitch, you stupid son of a bitch. I don't know how that means, like again, but that part, if somebody says that, then all of a sudden, if it is in the right moment, you heard it, you start thinking that laziness is something that you want to avoid through a lifetime. I'm showing you how shadows are formed. There are so many ways, but I'm giving a simplistic version of it. So if your parent or a teacher or somebody says good for nothing, and like in a place where you are like really vulnerable, one of your parents said, or one of your teachers said, you good for nothing. My goodness. If they said something like that, then what happens is you start living your life denying that you are not good for nothing, which means that denying that. So, in other words, you are saying, I'm not good for nothing. 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 And then you live your entire life fighting this curse called good for nothing. Does this make sense? So I had a client like this like recently. So when somebody has this thing, so if somebody calls me good for nothing, I'm going to stop them, right? So that has to be changed into an identity. So integrating that shadow into your identity is the best way to handle the shadow. So why should you change that? Keep in mind, if you plan to have kids, if you have kids, some kids leave one of their parents' shadows. And you might have seen that you have never shown the darker side of you to your kids. You have never ever yelled at them. You have been so like you read the best parenting books in the world, and you have an amazing parent. Oh, what a wonderful parent you are. But if your kids are fucked up, still, why? Because there is a part of you that you are denying that they are picking it up. Makes sense? And no kid is fucked up, by the way. They just pick the shadows up. So if you want to help your kids, or if you plan to have kids in the future, if you plan to have a bigger team, you will attract people with similar shadows into your life. Right? So I have a shadow of like I'm good for nothing. And I see another person who also feels I'm good for nothing. And then I meet him, I feel like this is my brother. This is my brother. Where were you all this time? And then I click with them. And all of a sudden, he and me are buddies, amigos. And he's like, oh my gosh, found my lost brother. And he's like, I found my lost brother too. And all of a sudden, you create a shadow connection. This could destroy your team, right? So you attract people with your weakness. And you convert your kids into your weakness. So the part of you that you don't accept is the shadow. The part of you that you do not accept is your shadow. And that shadow will be projected into your children. This is what happens. People who are like really, really successful, really, really famous, they cast bigger shadows. They cast bigger shadows than most people. This is why sometimes their kids are even more screwed up. Sometimes, right? Not all the time. So, which means that it's important, it's imperative that you handle and integrate your shadows for other purposes too. Let me ask you this question. Do you understand this idea of shadows? Do you understand that you're wasting 50 to 80% of your life's vital psychological energy that you don't have, that you are don't have, that's why you're postponing, and you're taking that energy and wasting it on pushing your shadow down. Imagine that, imagine that you are pushing a basketball into a pool. So the more you push, the stronger you need to push because basketball, because of Newton's law, it's pushing an equal force at you, right? The stronger you push, it's pushing you back, right? So if the stronger you push, it's pushing you back, then what happens? What happens is you are pushing this. I am not useless. I'm not useless. I'm not useless. I'm worthy. And you're living your life, whether you are extremely successful as a business person, or you're just starting out, or you're extremely successful as an actor or movie star, or in your own field, you might still be victim of this. You might still be living your entire life trying to prove a point. I'm not useless. Do you want to live your entire life at the end to figure out, oh, I was climbing the wrong building, wrong tree? So imagine that at the end of your life, you're like, okay, I spent 80 years of my life. I worked really hard. I reached to the other side, to the top of the building, and to realize that you are on the top of the wrong fucking building. Is that what you want? No. That's why we need to do what we do in our life from a position of strength than a position of weakness.